When The Sun runs a story about a £500 million stealth tax on 10 million savers, you'd better sit up and take notice. What were they writing about? Well, the removal of indexation relief for corporate capital gains from the 1st of January 2018. One of the few measures in last year's budget that had a direct impact, or will have a direct impact, on the financial services sector. Our bulletin at the time covered it in a little more detail, as you'd expect, our Technic bulletin that is. But we said, read HMRC's policy paper, Corporation Tax, the removal of capital gains tax indexation allowance from the 1st of January 2018, and you might think there's nothing to worry about. Under the standard heading, Impact on Individuals, Households and Families, the document, the HMRC document that is, says this measure has no impact on individuals or households as it only affects companies. Now, we called HMRC and emailed them on the night of the budget and asked them the question, would it affect life companies? And the answer that they gave was a classic straight bat, actually. It said, well, in fact, the man from the HMRC said in an HMRC-like voice, I can confirm that as life assurance companies are subject to corporation tax on their capital gains, this measure will apply to them. So what will it mean? Well, what it means will actually depend on the facts. It will depend on the extent to which the policyholders' funds make capital gains. It will depend on the rate of tax at which the life company reserves for capital gains, and of course it will depend on the rate of indexation relief. And remember, we're considering here RPI indexation, not CPI. So looking at those points, the amount of capital gain they make will of course depend on how well they manage the funds. But if we assume, let's assume for the purposes of this particular consideration that they make at least 3%. Why 3%? Because the OBR, Office for Budgetary Responsibility, projection for long-term RPI is that it should be around 3%. So as long as the gains are at least 3%, we can look at the impact that this change will have quite simply. Then we look at the rate at which the life company reserves for tax on the capital gains under the funds. It's worth reminding ourselves that when the life fund disposes of collective investments within the policyholders' funds, or is deemed to have disposed of them, as they will be, the taxation that arises from that actual or deemed disposal is payable over 7 years. So you get 7 years to pay the tax. So surely there should be some discount, i.e. they wouldn't have to reserve at the full rate of tax, should they? Now, by the way, that full rate of tax is 20% because in section 102 of the 2012 Finance Act, the rate of tax payable on capital gains made in policyholders' funds was fixed at the basic rate of tax, which is 20%. So is there any discount? Coming back to that point, well, probably not, because the yield currently on long-term gilts, 7-year gilts, in fact, because that's the relevant part here, because you can defer the tax for 7 years inside policyholder funds, is around 1%. So the discount's going to be next to nothing. So we'll ignore that and say they reserve for tax at the full 20% rate. If you're making gains of at least 3%, with RPI at 3%, then the extent to which you're going to be worse off is 20% of 3%. 0.6%, 60 basis points. That is in effect going to be the at worst effect of this change, but it is material and we will need to take it into account. But it's one of those other things that we now need to hold in the mix when we consider where's the best place to invest our money. Should it be in a UK life fund? Should it be in an offshore life fund? Should it be in an unwrapped investment like a collective investment, a unit trust, something like that? They're the sort of things that advisors have to advise on all the time. It's the great benefit of having a good advisor who knows about these changes, who takes these changes into account and helps you, the client, to make the right decision. So small changes, but important changes that need to be factored into those important decisions made by their advisors of clients to see how investors can get the best return after tax on investing their money. We'll be following this story as far as we can in the TechLink bulletins and giving you examples to help you. So go to TechLink, take a look.